There was a time just over 100 years ago when the largest city in all of North America, west of Chicago and north of San Francisco, was a place called Barkerville. Until 1862, mind you, there wasn't any Barkerville. Just a confluence of streams and meadows and tree-covered hills in the middle of the colony of British Columbia. But this tranquil setting hid a treasure of unimaginable riches. In 1862, Billy Barker arrived here looking for gold. With 7 companions, Billy sank a shaft 40 feet deep, and when he struck pay dirt, the rush was on. Billy became rich and died broke. But in between, they named it Barkerville, and thousands came by wagon and boat, on horse and on foot, to seek their fortune. At the height of its fame, the Barkerville area boasted 10,000 residents. When they arrived, they staked their claims. Perseverance, discovery, mucho oro, ne'er-do-well. The hand-cut signs were pounded into the ground by Williams Creek and nearby watersheds, Antler, Lightning and Lohe Creeks, Stout's Gulch, and others whose names have vanished. Incredibly, they worked by hand, 24 hours a day in and day out, with pick and shovel, pan and sluice box. Water was both friend and enemy. Friend because it turned the Cornish water wheels that made it possible to process the gold-bearing gravel in volume. Enemy because it was always there in the shafts and tunnels. Only a few found gold. For most, cruel working conditions, insufficient food, and bitter disappointment brought the dream to an end. Many moved on, but some stayed forever. In the Barkerville Cemetery, the average age on the headstones is 31 years. Some came as prospectors and stayed to become merchants, leaving the fantasy of instant wealth for the reality of commerce. When Charles House wearied of looking for gold, he opened a saloon where weary miners could slake their thirst. Andrew Kelly built a combination bake shop, coffee saloon, and lunch house that came to be known as Wake Up Jake's. Johnny Knott tried prospecting and then returned to his trade of carpenter to build the Barkerville Hotel. There were others who saw business opportunity. Francis Barnard began by carrying letters to the claims on foot and soon owned the Barnard Express, the longest stagecoach run in North America. His coaches traveled the Caribou Road from New Westminster to Barkerville, stopping at way stations like Cottonwood House. The Yanwar Company, which sold an astonishing variety of retail goods, opium included, was only one indication of a Chinese presence numbering 5,000. And there were stables, blacksmiths and tinsmiths, barbershops, and photographic galleries. 3 years after Billy Barker's strike, the town's first newspaper opened for business. The Caribou Sentinel sold for $1 an issue, and in its glory days enjoyed a circulation of 500. For 10 years, the Sentinel faithfully chronicled the life of the community. The record is here, in these pages, and outside there are memories at every turn. Oh yes, Barkerville has its ghosts all right. You can feel them as you stroll up Main Street and look into original buildings perfectly restored. With this sense of timeless time, the visitor is hardly surprised to encounter Miss Carruthers in her schoolhouse.
And now it's time for our spelling bee. The first word is prospect. Anne?
Prospect. P-R-O-S-P-E-C-T.
The widow Neat visiting Jenny Allen as she prepares the afternoon meal.
Hello, Jenny.
Hello, Mrs. Neat.
What are you making today?
Today I'm making bannock and beans, and the bannock should just about be done.
Oh, good. Oh, it looks delicious.
Or the Reverend Reynard entering church to conduct services. In a settlement given to rough ways and a single-minded obsession, the church was a comforting presence. A little more than a mile away, there was another place that dealt with the issues of right and wrong. The courthouse in Richfield was the eminent domain of Matthew Bailey Begbie, and it was here that the legendary hanging left no doubt about the distinction between frontier justice and the majesty of British law.
Let me define for those who have come from the United States what our laws look upon as liberty. Liberty is the power of doing what is allowed by law. When you go beyond that, you indulge in license. We have a law which prohibits the use of bowie knives, pistols, and other offensive weapons. And let me tell those who are in court, that in the course of my duty, I will punish most severely all those who, coming into this British colony, make use of such deadly weapons.
In the beginning, Barkerville was men's country. Working with a single-minded purpose, the prospectors dug their shafts and tunnels, ate and slept, and survived as best they could. But as women began to arrive, certain refinements appeared. The men bathed and trimmed their beards and dug down into their pack trunks for homespun suits. The Caribou Amateur Dramatic Society was formed in 1865, and the Theatre Royal soon became the cultural center of the community, presenting dramas, farces, and music hall variety. Today, the bell atop the theater still signals the start of each performance.
Many dogs that had vanished after the ball.
Thank you, Mr. Bass. Of the thousands of visitors who come to Barkerville each summer, few escape a feeling of wonder. From the moment the town site is entered, there's a sense of being transported all the way back into the gold rush days 120 years ago. And none are more delighted by the experience than school children from all over the province, who arrive by the busload in May and June. From grades 4 to 8, they pan for gold, and what excitement they sometimes even find it.
In the bannock, we already have 6 cups of flour, 1½ teaspoons of
They
salt.
bake bannock and beans under the watchful eye of Jenny Allen.
And the next ingredient we need is 4½ teaspoons of baking powder. Would you put that in, please? 1.
And they find out what it was like to take classes in Miss Carruthers' tiny one-room schoolhouse, grades 1 to 8.
Now, I want you to put your hands on your desk, and I'm going to inspect your fingernails and your faces to see that they're clean.
After slumbering for almost 100 years, its glory days forgotten, Barkerville was declared a historic park in 1958, and the work of rediscovering and recreating the past began. But how do you go about restoring a site so rich in its own distinctive history? How do you put the wine back in the bottle? This is the challenge for 17 full-time staff members who apply their skills with patient dedication. They are caretakers of a legend. Working from old photographs, newspaper files, church records, diaries, and letters, checking and rechecking in provincial archives, libraries, and museums, the team is recreating the town. Land holdings are identified. J.H. Todd's General Store is next to Wake Up Jake's. Further up the way stands the assay office, where prospectors brought their gold to be weighed. And at the end of the street, watching over the town, as it has for over 100 years, St. Saviour's Church. Targets for restoration are selected, and the work of peeling back a century of add-on and overlay begins. In the Van Valkenburg house, 13 layers of wallpaper were removed before the first pattern appeared. Another project is a triumph of detective work. Experts are precisely reconstructing the interior of this long-abandoned Chinese home, for which the rooms were designed to allow good spirits to flow harmoniously from one to the other. As the restoration goes on, Barkerville is returned to its own time, a decade in the 1860s when it was like no other place in North America. Some say the best time is in the evening, when the crowds have gone, and a stillness descends upon the town. Then, as you stroll up Main Street, you can almost feel the presence of those who once lived here, lived and dreamed and died. They came to Barkerville with a vision of gold, but long after the search had ended, they left a greater legacy. A living history of a time that will never happen again.